Hello and welcome to Healthy Living, where we delve into crucial aspects of health and well-being. I'm Aisha, Salihu. Today, we're focusing on a subject that touches the lives of millions of families, maternal care and the invaluable role of doulas. We'll explore how these dedicated professionals support expectant mothers through pregnancy, childbirth and the postpartum period, ensuring the health and well-being of both mother and baby. Joining us today is Rahmah Aliyu Yelwa, a certified doula with about 5 years of experience in maternal care. Welcome, Rahmah. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like for us to start with the basics. What exactly is a doula and what role do they play in maternal care?
So a doula is essentially a support person, and this is emotional support, is also someone that resources you. There are different kinds of doulas and there are different capacities. Some doulas choose to work in maybe pregnancy, some in birth, and some in postpartum. However, there are also full spectrum doulas who are support in pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, and in different capacities as well. Essentially, it's just to support the mother in the areas that she needs help. So, yeah.
I'd like for you to clarify for us, when you say doula, some people would think traditional birth attendant. In other cases, some people would say midwife. I'd like to hear the differences between, say, a doula, a traditional birth attendant, and also a midwife.
Okay, for example, I'm a doula, yeah, and my practice is hinged on traditional practices. So sometimes I do view myself as a traditional practitioner. However, there are also TSAs, who are traditional birth attendants, who are trained. They're sort of semi-trained midwives that hospitals train, that go into local communities. So these are women that probably speak the language of a community that they are going into, and are trained by the hospital to provide assistance where midwives are not available. Whereas midwives are fully trained medical professionals to care for women in pregnancy. So that's the difference. For a doula, we're medically aware, but we're not medically trained. A lot of our work, I wouldn't say is intuitive, but there are doulas that kind of maybe just to carry a baby, or there are doulas that focus on traditional models of care. So in this, based on what your focus is for your practice as a doula, that would inform the kind of knowledge that you need to acquire to do your job. So a midwife is medically trained. A TSA is also medically trained, but it's sort of like a doula, but she speaks the language of the people. She goes into communities. And a doula is not medically trained, medically informed, but doesn't necessarily work in that capacity. So it's emotional support, resourcing, and things like that, and physical support as well.
I'm more particular about doulas because for some people it may sound strange. They're hearing it most likely for the first time and they're wondering, what is a doula? Who is a doula? What do they actually do? I'd like for you to also explore the actual role of doulas in maternal care.
So interestingly, this weekend someone asked me what I did, and I said I'm a doula. They're like, in Nigeria? I'm like, yes. And I get that a lot. And they're like, oh, there are doulas in Nigeria. And my response is always, yes, I'm a doula in Nigeria. I do understand that sentiment. It was when I found language for what I wanted to do, or the work that I was doing, I realized that it was hard to find people that called it the same thing here in Nigeria. Not that there weren't women that were operating, I would say, as doulas, but they were not calling themselves doulas, or it's not recognized in that way. So yes, what I do is, for example, you would offer pregnancy support, and that's just kind of working with someone. It's kind of like education, but this is like one-on-one personal care, right? Where you're working with someone, and week by week, you're learning what is going on with them. They're learning what is going on with them, how they are feeling, how they're developing, and all of that. Offering support and validation, and also information and resourcing, and then helping them to kind of make decisions based on their circumstance, right? So, for example, if every choice is valid based on what it is that inspires that choice. So if I chose to have a CS, then it's someone that would which is a cesarean, is someone that is a choice that you can make on your own. If you're having a vaginal birth, and sometimes people choose to have vaginal births, and maybe due to circumstance or the nature of the pregnancy, they do end up having cesarean. But it's sort of like being able to work through that. The goal is to have your child in your hand, right? And to be healthy, and for both of you to be whole. So of course there's a disappointment that comes with, oh, I planned for a vaginal birth, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get it. So it's kind of like to reintegrate that information and come to peace with that knowledge, right? So there's a lot of emotional support and resourcing that comes with being a doula. Birth support is being present in the birth room. Now this is something that is I wouldn't say peculiar, but it's not available in all places. So in the first instance, if you contact me as a doula and you want to have a birth with me present, then the first thing we need to do is to find a provider that allows for a third party to be there that isn't your spouse. Do you see? So part of my work is, oh, okay, so you want to give birth with me present. That means we can't go to hospital A, but hospital B is friendly to having these types of scenarios, and that would be the focus on finding a hospital or provider that is open to this. And then, you know, in birth is then interestingly, because they would say you can't drink when you're in labor, which isn't true. You get dehydrated. Part of your water breaking is you losing water from your body. So there is a lot of dehydration. There's lots of, depending on how long your labor goes, there's lots of loss of energy. And so it's someone that kind of provides you with bursts of energy. So maybe it's a drink of water, maybe it's a little snack to eat while you're in labor, and sort of like your comfort person as well. And because I've been with you through the pregnancy, I know what your wishes are. Does not mean that they're set in stone and they can't change, but that we honor them as much as possible. And the goal is that we want the best outcomes for you and your child. And then postpartum, I think the most common expression of a doula is the women that do, like we call them ngozoma in Hausa, right? Ngozoma, those are women that would come and care for the mother, you know, the bath and all of that, the massage, the meals, things like that. So in that form of care.
You have stated the various supports that the doula provides during pregnancy and even childbirth and postpartum. I also want to hear from you. Earlier, even before the program started, we talked about how some clinics, some hospitals actually use the services of traditional birth attendants. And now I know that in your practice, you may not necessarily work with the medical professionals, but in an event where your client is asking for your presence during that time of delivery, I'd like to hear from you. How do you work with these medical professionals? Because you have stated earlier that there are some things that they say that may not necessarily impact on the health of the mother.
So I have worked, I consider myself as a member of a birth team. So if you're a member of a team, then there should be a briefing for what our goal is and what we're here to do. I have worked in as a doula with a TSA as well, with a traditional birth attendant, and also a midwife in the same birth, right? And the goal has always been the mother. It's not about what my practice and anything. It's just to ensure that she gets the best possible care. And most times we're in alignment. And when we're not in alignment with our views, then it's the view of the mother that triumphs. As long as it's not going to put her in harm's way, it's not going to endanger her, it's not going to endanger the baby. So she's the reason why we're here, and it's her voice. Basically, it's her choice of care that we go with. If it wasn't in a state of emergency. When there's an emergency, everything changes. But as long as there's no emergency, then it's led by the mother.
I know that you don't necessarily perform clinical tasks, but I'd like to know, there are cases where some women present with ectopic pregnancy or other complications during this stage of carrying their babies. I'd like to hear from you. How do you walk around where there is need for a scan if you're not clinical with them? How do you do that?
So because, like I mentioned, I'm part of a birth team, right? Meaning that there are other people doing other roles. Now, there are women that do choose not to have scans in their pregnancy, especially if you have a low-risk pregnancy, based on whatever it is that is informing their decision. And, so if that is a choice that you've made, but there are women that I do work with, women that still go for scans. And so it's kind of debriefing. That's not a service that I provide. But if you were going for a scan, for example, and you needed maybe someone to accompany you, I would accompany you. I wouldn't give a scan, and then we would make sense of what the information has presented together. So I'm not anti-medicine, I'm not anti-going for scans, I'm for choice. And the choices that women, the valid choices that women can make throughout their pregnancy and birth. You know, and in that process, there are other, if you have a birth complication, of course you would be in the hospital and you would receive, that's why it's there. But with the way that I view it, birth is a normal phenomenon. It's sort of like breathing. However, if you're having difficulty breathing, then they put you on life support. Do you understand? Like, but on a regular, everybody just breathes. And sometimes then maybe, it's funny that there's a time that we're learning movement. Not a lot of people even know how to breathe, right? It seems like a natural thing. Because when you're doing yoga, for example, or these exercises that require breathing, they will tell you, you know, when you inhale, your chest should go up, your tummy should expand. A lot of people find it difficult to breathe in that way. We forget how to breathe fully. So, you know, it's just presence like, oh, okay, relax and let your tummy expand. You can actually feel the expansion happening. And when you exhale, that it should go inside, things like that. So it's easy to do, but then sometimes people remind you of the modalities because that's what you're built to do. Women are naturally built to birth, but there are complications sometimes. And doesn't mean that when there are complications, you should not have assistance.
Now, I also want to hear from you. You have stated the role of the doula, but my issue here, my point here is about after birth. So this is a new mother now. Say some mothers sometimes have issues with breastfeeding. Maybe the breast milk is not readily pumping out, and I just want to hear how you help to provide support in that area and also transitioning and transforming them into parenthood, not just the mother now, even the father and also the child.
Okay, so with breastfeeding, for example, breastfeeding sometimes there's a natural trigger. Usually this is easier when you have a vaginal birth because all of the motions have already been set in place, right? And so the things that could hinder breastfeeding, maybe you have a poor latch. That is kind of like a lactation specialist, and it's kind of educating women on how to get a proper latch. That's why you find lots of times women may be breastfeeding and their nipples are cracked, or you know, it's painful and things because the baby isn't latched on properly, and so they're struggling to get milk. You know, everybody is going. So it's kind of like just making sure that you get a proper latch. You know, things like that. And part of also that is, I think that breastfeeding goes with the laws of demand and supply, right? That as long as, unless there was a presenting health barrier, as long as you're putting your child on breast and they have a proper latch, if they are demanding, then it will trigger a supply from your body. And so the more there's a demand, the more the body is trying to meet the demand. Now, of course, there are things that make breastfeeding easier, like you're getting proper rest, you know, you're eating well and things like that. And that's why in practice it's holistic, because then, you know, it's not just like, okay, you're giving birth, be pumping breast. You also, your well-being is important for the quality of your milk. So the things that you eat, the rest that you get, and, you know, even the situation around you. If you were in like a war zone, for example, right? Obviously, your mental state is not going to be the same as someone that is in a calm and safe environment. So it's all of those things ensured to that happen to ensure optimal health of the mom and the baby. So the support will be in lactation, in the things that you're eating, that you're getting, you're keeping warm, that your meals are nourishing, you know, things like that. So did you drink? I am you know, it's like traditionally women are given pap, for example, right? And sometimes lots of things, you know, there's fenugreek that's put in the pap, there's bitter leaf, and the way that it's made for women that have given birth is different, but all of those things are to enhance like your breast milk drop down and things like that. So in that way, those are the information that would inform the support that you're getting.
No, you have talked about breastfeeding. What about in taking care of the child moving forward, say in the first 3 months, 6 months, or even 1 year?
So I believe that obviously, like handling a newborn, a lot of people are very, especially if it's the first time, right? You're like, oh, how do I carry the baby? All of that, you know, they look so small and so squishy. So is that like in then assisting the father to carry the baby, assisting the, you know, usually or sometimes there will be an elder from the family as well present. And sometimes you find that, I think that as a society, we're very good at taking care of babies. Somehow, even, you know, when there's a birth, they would get someone to come and bathe the baby and things like that. We forget to take care of the mothers. And if the mothers are taken care of, the babies are fine. Because then if the mother is okay, she's able to produce milk, she's able to bond with her baby. That is also important for the survival of the baby. So those are the things, in that providing care for the mother, you're providing care for the baby as well, but you're also providing her with education on how to care for her baby. And I think a lot of things are, and also reminding her to trust herself, right? That you're capable as a mother, you're the best like person to care for this child that you have brought into the world. So it's kind of like, I think it's sort of like training wheels. You know, when you have a bicycle and it has a training wheel, a doula is present there to give you confidence, and then eventually you know that this is a bicycle I can ride, and then you take off your wheels and you just go. So it's just there to support you while you come into yourself. And this isn't just for first-time moms, because if you have a child for the first time, then you're a first-time mother. If you have another child, then you're a mother of two. The only experience you've had is having one child, and now you have two, and now you're managing two children. Do you see? So every birth, it's a rebirth for the mother as well, because it's an entirely new situation that you're then going to juggle with your old situation.
Earlier, we stated how doulas are not really popular in our climate, like in Nigeria here. And you also stated how you always tell people, yes, there's a doula in Nigeria, you are a doula. I want to hear from you. How has it been practicing this profession? I mean, how do you get your clients? Do they have enough confidence in you to help assist with the whole process?
So, whenever they say doula, and doula as a language doesn't necessarily exist, but doula as a practice exists. Our mothers are doing this thing. Our mothers come when we have babies and they take care of us and they provide our meals. Our mother-in-laws do it, our aunties do it. The women in our lives do it, right? So in their own capacity, they just haven't made it a profession, for example, right? And they're not available, because now for me, there are women that maybe may not have their mothers available, for different reasons. And sometimes it's just that you maybe need someone else to come that is not family, because there's a lot, depending on your situation is. So how do I meet people? It's been a lot of word of mouth. I'm in communities of women and things like that. I talk about the work that I do. People are curious sometimes, and I think the difference between me and maybe local practitioners is that maybe is information and the way that the care is offered, right? And I think that's also what I remember when my experience, when I went to my village and I see care, most times people tell you what to do. And people are averse to being told what to do, especially if there isn't like a why. People always want to ask why. And I'm happy to tell you why, right? It's sort of like, because I'm not like lording over you, I'm just here to support. And I think people appreciate that. So in practice, what I find is that I connect with younger people, obviously, because I'm young, and things, I'm younger. But whenever I meet like mothers and stuff, they're always like, the introduction, maybe your child has spoken that, I've gotten somebody, and then they see me, the first instant is this person, like, does she know what she's doing? But then in practice, when I start working with their child, or with the new mom now and everything, we also have a respectful relationship with the mothers, because they can tell that, like, I know what I'm doing. So it's kind of confidence that is built over time based on interaction. They're curious, but then over time, they trust that, and then I become almost the bridge then between the older generation and the younger generation. It's like, tell her this, and I'm like, I understand this, and maybe cultural context as well. So it's like, in our culture, this. I don't necessarily dismiss culture in my practice, because there's a place for that. So yeah, it's then interfacing.
I was actually going to come into culture and religion with your practice.
All right.
So just tell us about it.
I mean, people live by their cultures, right? And I remember, because I had done a few trainings. The first one I had done was with doula training, was with a lady in Canada and things like that. So it was based on their context. And one time there was a Moroccan lady that was also like giving classes on Moroccan modalities of care and things. One of the thread that I've noticed in care, right, across all cultures, is that their aim is the same, right? That the aim is to provide warmth, to provide nourishment and all of that, right? But then the culture then determines, or the region determines, what it is that you can give to meet that need, right? So for example, maybe in this culture they're talking about roses, and roses do this, right? But maybe we don't have roses readily available here. So it's like, what is the equivalent that can do the same thing as we have here? So I think that's how I translate culture, that it is what is available to the people, what is acceptable to the people, and to provide the aim is always the same, but what is acceptable to the people to meet the aim that they have, or the goal that they're. So it's like, you need warmth. Some people take pap. Some people take, call it different things. It's like food as well. We need nourishment. And some people eat eba, some people eat pounded yam, some people eat rice. The goal is the same, it's food. And it's your culture that informs what it is that you use for this need. But essentially, all cultures around the world have the same needs. We just meet them differently. So, yes, there's a respect for culture and religion of people that I'm working with.
Okay, so I'm now particular about complications that arise from your practice. I'd like to hear from you, drawing from your journey so far and your practice. How have you dealt with complications? And also, let us in on some of the success stories you have.
Fortunately, the most recent one, there was a time that I attended a home birth, and this was a midwife present and everything, and the complications arose. Now, because we had already been in contact with the hospital, that at the time the mother was expectant, she was also going to hospital, and she had also let them know of her wishes and desires, and I would like to have a home birth, but I want to monitor my pregnancy until it's time, so that that there's no risk and all of that. And they had certified that this was a low risk pregnancy. But as the pregnancy advanced, we realized that there was a need to go to transfer to a hospital, and that was fine. But there was already a hospital that was expectant, that was also in the know that, oh, okay, she has started labor, her contractions are so and so, right? And so it was easy to transfer. And that's why maybe it's a team, right? We're not in isolation. That sometimes when there are complications, and this was just because there was a home birth that was transferred to a medical institution, and she had a baby, and the mother and the baby are fine, and the goal was to have a baby that was fine, and the goal had been achieved, and all of that. In postpartum care, we haven't had any complications that have come up. We've dealt with mothers that have had CS before, and so it's then like, when you think about our bath, like, the hot water, it's always okay when after your 2 weeks visit to the doctor, then ask, are you ready then for to receive your bath and all of that. And there's always an interface with medical, that we have a go ahead and things like that, and then we proceed and all of that. And you go for the hospital checks as well, and so that's like the check and balance in practice.
I know in practice there's always the need for an advancement. I'd like to hear from you. We have stated how this is not quite popular here, but how do you now work with, say, developing yourself, advancing yourself, saying learning more, training more, maybe getting more certifications, just so that you're up to standard with the practice?
I think so. I would say that there's also a very supportive doula network of women around the world. At least in my experience from my training and all of that, like, we have like groups and things like that. Someone is always willing to offer support. Sometimes someone will go with a distress and, type in a message and stuff like that. But there's also, we're constantly evolving that, sometimes someone is sharing new research. There's also a workshop going on somewhere. There's a training going on somewhere, and I'm really grateful for that. I'm also grateful that even in this community that I have started the conversation, at least in what a doula is, right? And many people have been curious about that. I know someone that I was in conversation with who was having a VBAC, which means that she had a cesarean birth at first, and then she wanted to have a vaginal birth. This isn't always advised by medical professionals, because they're like, once you start a C-section, then you continue with that, but it's possible to have a VBAC, that's what it's called. And sort of we talked with her and things like that, and afterwards she was like, I think I want to become a doula for this, right? Because they're also women, and I love that there are also women that are considering this and like, maybe we should invest more in this. So my existence is to kind of educate and be like, this is necessary, and that not just that I'm doing it, but that more women should possibly be doing it as well. And I think a lot of more people are pausing and taking interest in it.
In maternal care, we can't talk about it without at least looking at the mental health factor of a mother, whether expectant mother or even a woman who has just given birth. We have seen cases of postpartum depression. I'd like to know the kind of support you provide in this regard, just so we have reduced cases or even zero cases.
Before I would say I have a theory, but I think that there are researchers that are proving more and more that this theory, there's truth in this theory. I think the quality of care that women get, specifically maybe the nature of your birth, right, but specifically the quality of care that you get in your postpartum would determine your state of your mental being, right? Now, if your needs are met, in this time, it reduces your tendencies for postpartum depression, for example. You know, that, I mean, if you think they would say a hungry man is an angry man, right? Now imagine a woman that had just given birth that is also suckling. You know, a lot of your energy is going to that, and you've not been feeding, you're not eating well, your hormones are already all over the place, right? That would tip you over the edge, right? That has an impact. That, you know, that you're not resting, that you're not being taken care of. Do you see? Like, all of those things have impact, and I think that if you get quality care postpartum, that definitely reduces your tendencies for postpartum depression.
Okay, just before we let you go, what advice can you give to expectant mothers who may be considering using the services of a doula?
What advice would I give them? I mean, that I think it's education for both, for members of your team. Now, members of your team is now your family members, right? Your support people. That will be your spouse, maybe whoever is with you, and things like that. But you yourself have to know what you want to be able to communicate to them. And I think so. What I see is difficult. A lot of times, my clients are second-time moms, not first-time. Okay. First time, you know, there's always the, oh, my husband would do this, my mother-in-law would do this. And I think sometimes your team fails you, and you realize that, oh, okay, this doesn't work. So the second time you want to be prepared, and you're like, forget these people. But that you also, these are your first people that, you know, to carry along and to educate and things like that. And sort of like I said, I also operate as a bridge. So it's kind of like passing information, to filtering what it is that your desires are, and then also communicating this with your team members who are members of your household.
Right. Thank you so much, Rahmah, for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. It's clear that doulas play a crucial role in maternal care, enhancing the health and well-being of both mothers and also babies. Now, just I'd like to also state right there that for our viewers who may be considering the services of a doula, you now know whether you should actually take up the services or not. We're not to decide for you. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. This has been Healthy Living on Trust Television. For comments, suggestions, and opinions, do well to follow us across all of our social media platforms. Until I come your way next time, I'm Aisha, Salihu. Thank you so much for watching.